From a studio overlooking the city of Los Angeles, this is your Universal Perspective with Joseph Dolezala.
I'm executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, which is a truth advocacy organization, a political activist organization, which has been seeking the resolution of the ET issue by political means since 1996.
Yes, I saw that. I see your nice web page, and you are for a long time in it, right? I believe your research started in 1966.
96.
Your group, but your research, you are for a long time in it, no?
I entered the field in 96. Prior to that, I was never officially involved in any way. I was aware of the issue, but then millions of people around the world have been aware of the issue since the 1940s. I noted it with interest. I think by 1970, if not sooner, I personally felt, yes, that the evidence seemed to indicate clearly there was an ET presence.
Right.
But there was just a personal view of mine. I did not formally engage this until 96.
Right. I see that you appealed the Congress to open investigation on UFOs. How does it go?
Well, we have right now a congressional hearing initiative underway. It's been formally underway since November the 5th of 2014.
14, yeah.
It is a multi-track initiative. First and foremost, the U.S. Congress has not engaged this issue since 1968. That's 47 years. And in those 47 years, an awful lot of evidence is amassed. A lot has happened, witnesses, but the Congress has done nothing.
Right.
The two hearings that they did hold back in 68 and 66 were not bad. I mean, they were one day, there was some information exchanged, but it was mostly for show. It wasn't intended to resolve anything.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we are now making a move to get Congress to hold the hearings that they should have held years ago. And one of the reasons that we're able to push this effectively is that, one, there are scores of witnesses now ready to testify. And by that, I mean military agency political witnesses of rank and station. And more importantly, we created held a mock hearing, a mock congressional hearing called the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure in April, May of 2013, where 42 of these kinds of witnesses actually testified before 6 former members of Congress. We filmed that, and all of the House and Senate offices have been provided a full 30-hour record of that hearing, and they can easily see exactly the kind of testimony and how it went. That is a first. That's never happened before. We also have provided to these offices a link, a private link on the website where they can watch it all on the internet. So this has created the platform on which we can truly make some progress. Now, I've already met with offices, maybe 15, 20, not sure the exact number, since March of this year, and more meetings will be held. So that's underway, and there's been quite a bit of press coverage of that in Washington, primarily political press coverage, which is what's important.
Exactly, that's most important. Yeah.
But there's a second component to this initiative, and that is that PRG is committed to seeing that the ET presence issue becomes a part of the current presidential campaign, which has now still, I think, 15 or 16 candidates in the 2 major parties, and has already been going on for a year, with a year to go, including many debates and, of course, a great deal of press coverage. We're on the verge of forcing this issue into the campaign. And when that happens, well, let's just say that things could happen very quickly.
Right. And what do you think, who's gonna win the campaign? Do you got any suggestion for who can win? Or yeah, I know it is hard, but
I'm not campaigning for anyone in particular. The leading candidate right now is still Secretary Clinton. And then there are 12 or 13 Republican challengers. But a year from the election, too soon. Secretary Clinton, or Senator Clinton at the time, was leading and the leading candidate in about this time in 2007. She lost. She didn't even get to the election. She lost to Barack Obama at the convention. So it's too soon. But what's important is that the current leading campaign, Secretary Clinton, and her husband, and her campaign chairman, John Podesta, former key advisor to her husband and chief of staff to her husband, as well as Leon Panetta, the chief of staff to her husband, as well as Obama's CIA director and Secretary of Defense, and Bill Richardson, the Secretary of Energy to her husband, and a vice presidential option for her in 2007, and the former governor of New Mexico, and others in their immediate group have never spoken publicly about the 3-year effort by Lawrence Rockefeller to convince her husband to release all the UFO files and essentially resolve the issue between 1993 and 1996. That is history. That's what happened. He was president when Rockefeller made this decision in March of 1993. And I applaud them for making an effort to look at the issue, to get information. I'm sure they were given absolutely nothing by the Pentagon. The president does not have a need to know. And that's all well and good. Unfortunately, the press didn't cover it because it's not allowed to cover that kind of thing. It's embargoed here in a way. And then they felt they could basically skate and never have to speak about it while they pursued their further political ambitions. Unfortunately for them, a research colleague of mine, Grant Cameron, obtained in 2001 1,000 pages of documents about all of that, which were then copied and handed over to the Washington Post and the USA Today, who did absolutely nothing with it. They did not cover it at all. And then they were put up on the internet, where they've resided for the last 14 years. And now, in a week or so, just a moment.
sure. Whoa, a lot of papers.
These are the Rockefeller Initiative documents. And in a week, I'm going to deliver a full set of these to all 6 of the committees we're currently targeting for hearings. The House and Senate Armed Services Committee, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, and the House and Senate Science and Technology Committees. That's never been done before, though they've all been provided, again, the internet access to these documents. And there's more media coverage coming on these documents, as well as the Congressional Hearing Initiative in December through significant publications. If you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, there is a link right there at the bottom where you can go watch the status of this entire process.
If you can repeat one more time your webpage.
Paradigmresearchgroup.org, or Google Stephen Bassett.
Yes.
It's the first page that comes up.
Okay, I wanted that for our Czech listeners when they can find it. Now, what kind of witnesses you wanna present in eventual congressional hearing?
The witnesses that will be asked to testify are military agency political witnesses of rank and station. They are individuals who would have had direct access to events or evidence confirming the extraterrestrial presence. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell certainly would be a witness. There are a number of Air Force pilots which would certainly be a witness to represent the nearly 4,000 sighting reports from pilots, and also commercial pilots, that have been archived, which again the government will not respond to. and they will testify to these sightings, which include discs flying off the wings of military and commercial planes. And they will also testify to the fact that for the last 40 years, the U.S. military and U.S. commercial airliners have forbidden their pilots from speaking about these kinds of sightings, mainly being part of the truth embargo. Obviously, we have a number of top researchers that will present. We also have military officers who are direct witnesses, firsthand witnesses to events in which American nuclear missiles were turned off by ET craft
Right, I
at
get it.
various missile sites, as well as tampering events in the United Kingdom. So we have that kind of testimony. And then we have, of the 32 government and private principals involved in the Rockefeller Initiative from March of 1993 to October of 1996, 25 are still alive. And most of them will be called to testify to the Rockefeller Initiative events. So that gives you a sense of the witnesses that could testify before these hearings.
Yeah, that's great, because that's gonna put pressure on the establishment to open their files or something like that, you know.
It will put more than pressure. It will end the truth embargo fairly quickly. If those hearings are held, in fact, if those hearings are just committed to, the truth embargo could collapse in a very short amount of time. And what I mean by the truth embargo collapsing is that pressure would grow so great on the White House and the Pentagon that the current president, which would be, of course, President Obama, and the Pentagon would have to strike a deal in which each side was sufficiently comfortable with the way that the president would handle the post-disclosure world. And once that deal was struck, the president could then make the announcement of the ET presence, which is all that we're asking for, the formal acknowledgement of ET presence. That is the disclosure event. That is what all of this is headed for. And again, that could happen at any time, and it will happen very quickly.
Right, and what do you think about ATs and UFOs? Do you think they somehow are part of that current situation, or?
I understand. I don't have evidence which even comes close to confirming a formal arrangement between the U.S. government or any government and ETs as part of this disclosure process. Formal arrangement. If you look at the actions of the extraterrestrials going back the last 68 years, it's not unreasonable to think that they are not uncomfortable with disclosure taking place. What they do is only help advance the process. I mean, if the ETs were completely clandestine, if they were able to conduct their affairs without anyone seeing or knowing, if they weren't putting crop circles down or agroglyphs down, particularly in the UK, mostly in the UK, on a yearly basis, and being filmed and or at least having these things being watched very carefully, one might assume that they have no interest in seeing disclosure take place. But in fact, their actions are helping to drive the process. So at least I see evidence that the ETs are encouraging it from their end. Now, they have a reason for that, which I can only guess at. But the conclusion that I've arrived at is that the ultimate outcome for this is open contact, not clandestine contact. Open contact, official contact. And disclosure needs to happen first. There seems to be a protocol here, in a way, I guess you could say. And that doesn't mean it will be that way. I mean, the ETs can force the issue anytime they want, but they are waiting. Apparently, they're willing to wait for disclosure. Once disclosure takes place, I don't think it'll be that long before open contact takes place. I've put a figure out there, a time of about 2 years. Wouldn't shock me if it was less than that.
Okay, but what do you think gonna happen with politic process, you know, which is right now on the way. Let's say we got current problem between the Turkey and Russia and stuff like that. How they gonna handle that?
Well, well, first of all, let's divide the world up into two parts: pre-disclosure and post-disclosure, which history probably will. That's why my good friend Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel wrote a book called AD After Disclosure, AD, and postured that history will be divided up into BD, AD, before disclosure and after disclosure. Before disclosure, well, everything that's going on in the Middle East and everywhere else in the world is pretty much following a script we've been following using since 7,000 years ago. Nothing much has changed. We have a certain approach to ourselves and the world, and we've gotten better at it. Our wars have gotten more violent, our weapons more destructive, our actions pretty heinous, though. Actually, right now, I would say what's going on in the Middle East easily matches the worst the Nazis did, in a sense. Maybe not on the same scope yet.
Right.
So we know what's going to happen pre-disclosure. Post-disclosure is what this is all about. What will the impact of post-disclosure have on these players? Right. Now, one can make a case that they'll get worse. I can make a case things will get better. But one thing I think is clearly not in doubt, and that is that the disclosure of the ET presence will be the greatest worldview paradigm shift in human history. And so we will have a huge new component in our worldview post-disclosure. And that component is going to play a role in every decision that's made going forward from that moment. Who to invade, when to invade, what not to invade, what weapons to use, whether or not to start going for diplomacy with respect to the Middle East, diplomacy with respect to South China Sea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whether or not to give the UN a chance to actually be a UN or replace it with something that can do that job. All kinds of decisions will be impacted. If we make good decisions post-disclosure, we may get out of this mess. All I'm saying is I pretty much know, as an advocate, I have no doubts because I know where things are going to go if we don't disclose. I can't guarantee where things are going to go if we disclose. All I can say is it can't get worse.
Yeah, well, it can over here. I mean, it was last week. It was really close, when they shoot down the Russian plane in Turkey, in Syria.
That's not what I meant. What I meant is that overall, the larger perspective, after disclosure, in general, things can't, get worse, in my opinion. Worse than where they're already going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I mean. Oh yeah, things can get worse. We can have a nuclear war. The point is that based on where we're already going, I just don't think it'll get worse. I think overall the outcomes could get better. That doesn't mean we won't have terrible things happen post-disclosure. However, even if you have terrible things happen, post-disclosure worldview may improve or alter how we respond to terrible things. All right. This is something that people don't understand well. They don't understand that most of the damage that is done by humans in the conduct of their affairs is in the response to events, not the events. All right. 9/11 was an event that killed 3,400 people, destroyed a few buildings, and hurt Americans' national pride. That's not nice. The buildings will be replaced. The number of people that died is less than about 1/10 of the number of people that die in America every year in automobile crashes.
Right.
So we could have responded to those events in a myriad of ways. We could have there was all kinds of choices that could have been made. A lot of ways we could have gone. But we used the traditional approach, the traditional response. And what was that response? Spend $3 trillion, maybe $4 trillion, destroy the infrastructure of 6 countries, kill 1.5 million people, displace 5 to 10 million refugees, destabilize all of Europe. If we had just said, ouch, after 9/11, and shored up our defenses and not taken any further action, nothing the terrorists could have done after that could match what we did in response. This, when the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife were murdered by those two Serbs, they could have just said, got a new Archduke. Instead, they used that as the excuse to trigger World War I, killing tens of millions of people. All right. This is the way humans operate. You can't do that anymore. We can't do it anymore, but we keep trying. And so the post-disclosure worldview change, I'm more focused and I am more optimistic about its ability to affect how we respond to events as opposed to whether we create an event. There will be more terrorism post-disclosure. It can't be stopped, but we may respond differently. So this is a complex idea. This is not something that persons can just grasp easily, and that therefore the politicians do not speak to it, the press does not speak to it, and the American people do not grasp it. But hey, what can you do? The job of the activists is to go where they won't go, to raise the issues they won't raise, and to get things done that they will not get done.
Right, that's what we have right now in Czech Republic. We got thousands and thousands immigrants coming into Europe, you know. I believe they said something about 1 million refugees this year in Germany. So
yeah, the total number could rise to 25 million for Germany, particularly with Russia entering the war, when France entering the war and continuing to bomb. I mean, you know why these refugees are coming to Europe, right?
Well, I got kind of feeling when it is because they want to destroy Europe, you know, the culture and stuff like that.
That's not why the refugees are coming. The refugees are coming because extremists, religious fanatics, as well as some other players, probably including Saudi Arabia, right?
Right.
Want to destabilize Europe.
Right.
By
by
drawing the United States into the Middle East to bomb the hell out of everybody. Those people are coming there, not because they signed up with some deal to destroy Europe, but because their homes have been destroyed. Right. Their bombs are raining down on them. Their water plants are destroyed. Their power plants are destroyed. They're literally in the middle of a massive bombing range that extends throughout the entire Middle East. They're dying by the hundreds of thousands. So they're fleeing to Europe. And the only reason you didn't respond that way initially is because a great deal of effort is being put by the United States to propagandize this so that people don't point back to the United States as the fundamental cause of this. In other words, the U.S. is trying to get through this blameless. We are the reason why the refugees are fleeing, because we are giving certain actors in the Middle East exactly what they want, which is to destabilize Europe and create a war for the caliphate. In other words, our politicians are so goddamn stupid that they haven't learned history after all of this time, and they're literally walking the plank to the tune of other players for what we're still trying to comprehend. A lot of them seem to be, we have a lot of what we call apocalyptic fundamentalists now running around in the United States who actually view history and end times and see their actions as pursuing that. So they see the end coming anyway. That's not good. You don't want them in government in any way, shape, or form. And there's plenty of those in the Middle East as well. So the recipe is for disaster. But this is one American who is not going to let America skate on this, right? We have encouraged our allies to bomb with us, to kill with us. And we have killed a boatload, and I use that term deliberately, of men, women, children, innocent men, women, and children. How many, I do not know, but it will probably end up well above 1 million or more. All right. And when you do that, two things happen. They flee to higher ground, and they hate you until the day they die. And this is what's going on now. And so I make the case that learning that there's an extraterrestrial presence, learning we're not alone in the universe, that there are sophisticated advanced civilizations that don't conduct themselves this way. And to them, we probably look like silly children.
Right.
May alter our worldview at the point where we may decide enough is enough. We've been doing this for 7,000 years. We don't need to do it any longer.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And that's what's going to happen in Europe, because the people, they have, of course, nowhere to go. They don't have any food. They don't have any money. So they're going to start rioting, And what they said down there, they said in 10 people, like every almost 7 people are terrorists,
No.
No, you don't think so?
I imagine that they certainly could have, I think, put it this way, there are already plenty of sleepers in Europe, but they certainly have gotten more in through the immigration, 1,000 or 2, right? So you're talking about a very small percentage, a tiny percentage of the refugees are in fact operatives or terrorists. But they don't need a lot. They don't need a lot at all. 1,000 sleepers able to function and go into action is more than enough to destabilize Europe to the point that it comes apart completely. So that kind of numbers are being thrown around by, the terrorists would love you to think it's 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
they would love you to think that your entire world is coming down because they want the most stringent response. They want the walls to go up. They want riots. They want the works. And if we don't get a change soon, and again, I think disclosure could happen within the next month or 2. I mean, this is not a long-term project I'm on now. We're in the end game of this. But if disclosure happens, it could very well change the picture. But if disclosure doesn't happen, then the outcome is fairly predictable. European Union will collapse. There will be increasingly violent events taking place outside of Europe as well. And ultimately, there will be a nuclear event in which a city of importance, Washington, Tel Aviv, Moscow, one that fits their agenda, one that they feel they have a moral equivalency card to attack, and they'll set off a nuke in it, and then things will get really interesting. That's almost at this point almost inevitable. Without disclosure, it's absolutely inevitable. I guarantee it. I would put $1,000 down at 1,000,000 to 1 odds. There will be a nuclear event. Only disclosure could possibly disrupt this trend, this thread. That the American people are not fully briefed on this is, again, an example of the fact that we no longer have a need to know. We're not really part of the process anymore. The government does whatever the hell it wants. We're not in the game. And so we're not allowed to know a lot of things because it would upset us and we might object. And that's how you get things done if you are lunatics and sociopaths. And we're being led increasingly by lunatics and sociopaths. Bummer.
Who is staying behind that plot? Who they are? The shadow New World Order, or who it is? You think those people who drive the?
You mean? Do I have they published their names and addresses?
I don't think so. You're gonna know it. But
look, it's not that shadowy in a way. I mean, what are the countries involved? Who are their leaders? Right? Who gave the orders? Right? We know who authorized these wars. We know who authorized these actions. Right? If there are a couple of shadow players, in a sense, countries that are operating in a far more, how would you say, trying to find the right word, indirect and clandestine way, and those two would be Saudi Arabia and Israel. So no one really fully knows what these two countries ultimately want and what they're doing behind the scenes as much as these other nations. But again, the major players are doing plenty. So we know who benefits from these things: jingoists, extremists, and of course corporations involved in war economy. Right.
Right.
there are also, again, increasingly religious fanatical agendas, which is something you never want to see happen, right? Because that's there's no reason there anymore. You're out of the world of reason and you're into something else entirely. So I encourage people to look at the obvious and not keep looking for the ultra mysterious, super hidden Illuminati explanations, because frankly they're missing the obvious, which is right in front of them. And we know a great deal where we just won't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're gonna see in the close future how that's gonna go, and I think your disclosure will be maybe something which can avoid the another bad things to happen to the world.
Yeah, that's the idea. There's never been a worldview change of this magnitude available to us. And by not only in magnitude in terms of people and scope, but also in time. There have been major worldview shifts in the past, but this one will happen virtually overnight. These others took a very long time, all right, for them to, quote, take hold and have major impact. Not this time. This will happen overnight. Within a day, most of the world's people will know the ET presence has been formally acknowledged, thanks to our internet and other communications.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like instant worldview change in a can. So we've never experienced it. But we've had 60 years to contemplate it and think about it. And there has been a lot of thinking about it. And we're starting to see some analysis, and not from Harvard or Yale or any government think tanks, because of course that would be in violation of the, quote, truth embargo. And so they remain silent to their everlasting disgrace. But there are people that have put time and effort with almost no money to support them to try to understand and analyze and talk about this. So there is information available, and people are starting to get a picture of the concept of disclosure, post-disclosure. And maybe that'll help. The intelligence services have been gaming this a long time. Believe me, they've been planning for a post-disclosure world for a long time. The citizens, on the other hand, no. So they're in a position to get off to a pretty fast start with whatever way they want it to go and shape post-disclosure, which I think would probably create a world just like this one, but with the ETs acknowledged, but with the same game still being played, which would be a very sad and catastrophic outcome. But the people are learning. They've got access to information. And so my hope is that when the disclosure event occurs, within days, millions and millions of people around the world will be immediately voicing their interest and intentions. And the intelligence agencies and the intelligence empires that exist in various major countries will not get too far ahead of us. And it will become a multi-participatory process in which many institutions are involved in determining what we're going to do after that. But no guarantees at all. The only guarantee that we do have is that we will have finally the truth about the ET presence. And that is a powerful truth. We'll have it. What is not clear is what we'll do with it.
Yeah. You're right. Well, we're gonna see, and it's gonna be basically in very short time period, which you're gonna know, right?
Well, based upon the way things are going, it can happen any time now. And that's referring to the U.S. Understand, there are other nations that could disclose. We're not the only one that has the ability to do that, and that would be the same thing. If Vladimir Putin chose to disclose the ET presence, it would be the same as President Obama doing it. If the head of the Czech, is it Republic?
Yeah, Czech Republic, Miloš Zeman. Miloš Zeman.
Do it,
yeah.
Might not. It might not.
I know.
But it might set the stage for a little bit more to happen. But let me mention that there is a website that I created called the exopoliticsworld.net site, exopoliticsworld.net. And the goal there was to ultimately one day have one website, exopolitics website for every nation in the world, a portal. As
Right.
Last I checked, hang on a second.
Right.
I think Czech may have a site. Just a second. Okay, here we go. Got it. Okay. Yeah, the Czech Republic does have a site, exopoliticsczechrepublic.cz.
TZ.
And let me see if it's still working. Give it a second. Yes, it is. So I invite your listeners to go to exopolitica.cz or go to exopoliticsworld.net and find the link. And we're hoping more countries will eventually sign up. This is volunteer.
Right.
One person agrees to own, create, maintain the site. One per country. First
Right.
come, first serve. And to provide information and act as a portal for the exopolitical developments, of which disclosure is the most important. I think we got 23 countries. Post-disclosure, very quickly, we'll have 200 countries. But Czech Republic is involved. So I encourage people to go there, and that could be the place where they could get involved themselves and interact with that site and maybe help out and bring the Czech Republic into it. Czech Republic is a great nation, wonderful place.